Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Nagasa from Sanyii Academy. Today, I'm going to teach Global Trend Discourse, Chapter 2. If you are new for this channel, please start by subscribing and liking. And if you are already member to Sanyii Academy, start by liking, commenting, and sharing the video. You can also use social media links just to follow Sanyii Academy. Hit the notification button just to get notified every time new video is uploaded to Sanyii Academy. Having said this, just I want to directly proceed to today's lesson. Uh, Today we are going to discuss about lesson 4 regarding foreign policy dimensions. In the previous sessions, we have discussed about foreign policy behaviors, patterns, and trends, and we have identified three patterns and trends of foreign policy, such as self-preservation, which is mostly used by the United States of America, and the second one is self-extension. This is an approach that other countries use to extend themselves to change the international system in their own favor. And the third one is self-abnegation, mostly used by least developed countries, facilitating their foreign policy approach and behaviors in the favor of other countries or nations. Today, we are going to see the dimensions in which foreign policy is conducted and applied in the international relations. In order to get deep insight about foreign policy, we should not only focus on the objectives and also behaviors. There is also an important point to make from the perspective of looking at dimensions. In this session, the main point of our discussion would be foreign policy dimensions. The analysis of foreign policy behavior can also be done along a number of specific dimensions. We use different and various dimensions to analyze foreign policy and understand the concept behind, understand the objective and rationale behind. However, behavior can change over time and with different style of leaderships and circumstances. State behaviors does not remain the same all throughout its existence. There are different factors that force the state behavior to be changed in the entire uh, relations that it makes with other countries. All those factors that make the state behavior change are different circumstances that may happen in or outside the country, and leadership style that are emerged in the country's politics. Leaders have different visions, ambitions, and also psychological makeup. If you remember in chapter 1, we have seen about analysis of international relation, levels of analysis of international relation, and we have discussed about individual level where the psychological makeup of individuals play a significant role in understanding international relation in the international system. Similarly, the leadership style and leaders' psychology plays a significant role in the foreign policy dimensions and foreign policy behaviors. So this is what we have to understand before going to deal with the dimensions. Analysis of foreign policy need us to look into the deep understanding of the country's politics and international system, how it is going and how it is operating. Because these factors are very determinant to change the behavior and actions of the state. There are several dimensions that are important to analyze foreign policy of the country, but let us focus on some which are very important with this course and give you understanding about how foreign policy analysis could be understood from the perspective of dimensions. There are dimensions that we have to emphasize. These dimensions include alignment, scope, and modus operandi or modus of operation. These dimensions have their own specific goal and way of applications, and we are going to look at them in detail. Let us now start to focus on each dimensions and how they operate, how they are important to analyze this foreign policy. The first one is alignment. Alignment is one of the foreign policy dimensions in which a country's alignment behavior can vary from time to time. The alignment of the country differs from time to time. It changes as the time passes. Everything changes. There is no permanent thing, and everything changes. In the international politics, it is said there is no permanent enemy or permanent friend, but there is a permanent interest. This permanent interest changes various actions that the state take and what sort of ascription it gives to its enemies and friends. The one which was enemy at one time for the state may become a friend. Consider the situation of Eritrea and Ethiopia. Eritrea and Ethiopia were enemies for more than 12 decades. Now they're friends. They were enemy for 2 decades, and now they are friends. There is no country just like Eritrea that is working with Ethiopian government. So there is no permanent enemy or permanent friend. Rather, there is a permanent interest. So a country's alignment behavior may change from time to time. This could be from history to respond to changing circumstances and policies. The alignment change of the country depends on the history of that country to respond to changing circumstances and policy dimensions or decisions that are made by country or international community. So these are some of the factors that are responsible for the change of alignment. One can identify alignment tendencies such as alliance, neutrality, and non-alignment. So there are different aspects in which this alignment could take place, but these are also important to get into account and take it into account so as to improve the function of that alignment. Basically, alignment is a formal agreement to provide mutual military assistance or maybe another thing. Mostly, alignments are very basic and also understandable from the perspective of military assistance. Countries come together, work together, align themselves together to achieve military assistance and also benefit. It carries certain benefits as well as risks. There are benefits and risks that are attached to this alignment, although it is an important factor for the countries to take into account. Alignment tendencies include the alliance, neutrality, and alignment. These are tendencies from which alignment could be made. Let us see those tendencies from which alignment could take place and how they contribute to that foreign policy analysis and the importance of making alignment. Number one is alliance. Alliance is a formal agreement to provide mutual military assistance between nations or countries. Because this is the agreement and working together to address their common enemy or just provide mutual military assistance in terms of training, in terms of weapons, and also intelligence. Allied countries can pool their military resources, acquire access to foreign bases. These are mostly characterized in countries such as NATO countries. These NATO countries pooled their resources together, military weapon, finance, and human resource. And also, they have tried to establish bases in different countries to help their member countries from external aggression. And what is going on today is the replica of alliance. And also other countries work together. They make military training together, North Korea and China, North Korea and Russia. These are countries that are just making such alliance to defend themselves from coming external attack. Russia and Belarus has or have also done the same to maintain their collective security and work together to keep their region or their strategic location from external threat or attack. Yet an alliance state also risks interference by allies in its domestic affairs, the possibility of being tracked. Mostly, those countries which are in that alliance could be exposed to intervention from member countries in the domestic policy and also political affairs of that country. Because when you are signing on the country's sign alliance or collective military security, this would be an instrument and the case for the interference in the domestic politics of that particular country by the alliance or the group members in that alliance. And this would have the possibility to drag the country to act in a way that it does not like or want to act. This could export the country to interfere in the politics of foreign countries, and this would damage the relationship of that country with that member country. So we need to understand here there is risk in alliance, although there are some benefits that they maintain together or achieve together in terms of collective security. So these are some of the way in which risks and possibility of negative aspects of this alliance may happen. Um, the second one is neutrality. Neutrality is another aspect of alliance. This is a stance of formal non-partnership in the world's affairs. This is remaining neutral, not participating in politics of the sides, not joining those sides. Neutrals may avoid some of the problems associated with alliances. Mostly, alliances produces potential enemies and counter alliances. If the countries come together, pull their resources together to build alliance, it would give the possibility for other enemies to build counter alliance. This is another problem. So countries may face sanctions and problems coming from these kind of formations. In order to avoid that problem, they choose to be neutral in the global politics. Being neutral has the advantage of not involving in the politics of two sides. This is important, but it does not guarantee their security. It does not help them to achieve whatever they want because the global politics is not stable, and every time there are problems that we face, there are problems that we experience. States are not free of threat, they are not free of external influence. At this moment, there would be a possibility for the country to be pressed by both sides to become their member or supporter or advocate, but that is not enough. So, Switzerland, for example, has carried a neutrality to an extreme case in refusing to membership to United Nations until 2002. This country has strongly opposed to become the member of United Nations because there were many instances in which decisions that could make negative impact on the global peace. And also, there are dividing approach that are used by developed countries in the United Nations. So, to avoid that situation and condition, Switzerland chose to be neutral, but it did not remain for long. It was broken. It broke its commitment to neutrality and became member to the United Nations in 2002. This marks that you cannot, as a country, continue to remain neutral as far as the global conditions influence the country's politics and economic situations. States or states tend to side on a key issues. Countries can tilt towards one side or another in some strategic issues without necessarily becoming part of the formal alliance. There are occasions and situations in which the country chose to do some activity on certain issues, but does not take full formal alliance in the politics of that alliance or become member to that formations or that organization. The best example that we can raised here is Israel. Israel is not the formal ally of the United States of America, but it has sided with the United States of America on many issues, fighting terrorism and also maintaining international peace and stabilities. There are so many things that it worked with the US and is still working, but it did not just create this side and alliance formally. The country is neutral. Neutral does not mean it is not working with other countries, with the rest of the countries. It is to indicate that the country is not participating in the politics of two sides. Rather, it is just making it its business with their countries. And the third one is non-alignment. Non-alignment is another dimension of foreign policy and which is also from other perspective. It is the foreign policy pattern of most developing states during the Cold War. The best example we can raise here is the Cold War politics. It was where tensions and situations between the leaders of the time, superpowers of the time, had created. So most developing countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America chose to remain non-aligned. So this is what we can understand. Most developing countries adopted NAM or non-alignment movement, a new foreign policy choice to be followed disregarding the both the West and the East Bloc politics and alliances. So they chose to block or chose to remain non-aligned and not be part of the politics of the West and the East. They disregarded. They chose to remain non-aligned. Non-aligned movement had noble agenda that called for the South-South cooperation. That means it has opened the gate, it's opened the opportunity for developing countries to create South-South cooperation because the Cold War politics was basically the competition between the West and the East. So, in order to avoid that problem, they use this gap to create South-South cooperation. That means developing nation with developing nation cooperation. So they chose to disregard or not to be allied with the politics of both countries. And this is what non-alignment is. And the second foreign policy dimension is the scope. This is basically the focus on the country's activities and interests. Scope is it is the scope of countries' activities and interests. That means some countries have extensive, far-reaching international contacts, while other countries have more limited activities abroad. So, from that perspective, we can categorize this form of scope of foreign policy from the in three terms or in three areas. Some states act in global terms. Most of the time, the United States of America has accepted the global politics as it is politics, global security as it is security, and whatever the world faces is considered as national security issue of the United States of America. So when it makes this policy, when it operates and functions, the United States of America considers from the global perspective. So it acts from global terms. And the second one is regional terms of scope. The scope of foreign policy of the country could be regional. That means South Africa, India, and so on takes their activity and interest from regional perspective. That means emphasized on their region. For example, South Africa on Africa, and India on Asia or Middle East, or other maybe they use sometimes China also emphasize at Asia level. So this is the operation and activity of the country from regional perspective. And the third one is others follow policies of isolationism. Basically, these are countries that would isolate itself to focus on its internal or domestic politics and using the resource that it has to the maximum without requesting others to help and also give any other resources to achieve its objectives. So, in this case, countries would allow themselves to be isolated and use their resources to reach their national objectives. So, Burma, for example, in 1960s and 70s, used this foreign policy. At one time, Japan also used this kind of policy. So, isolationism is isolating yourself from the global politics and focusing on your domestic political situations and patterns. And the third one is modes of operation or modus operandi. This is a foreign policy dimension in which we understand how the states are trying to achieve their objective in the international system. So this helps us to get the point that the states are trying to get what they want in this case or in this way. This means a lot to achieve the foreign policy analysis. We can also identify certain patterns of foreign policy behaviors on the basis of modus operandi, the method of operation of the countries. These are maybe unilateral or multilateral. Countries choose these two options. There are also bilateral approach. Unilateral, that means countries try to solve their problems by themselves. They do not allow other states to interfere in their politics and also internal affairs. So they choose to solve their problem individually. The second one is multilateral. That means tendency to seek solutions through diplomatic forums like the United Nations, like International Monetary Fund, and other international organizational approach. So this is the way, for example, currently in 2002, there was a meeting that was organized by the United Nations on the climate change in Egypt. These are forums that are prepared by the United Nations to address collective problem that is global climate change. So this is a tendency to seek solutions to common problems through diplomatic talks and negotiations. Most developing countries use the multilateral approach because there are many limitations they face. So, to fill that gap, limitation or resource gap and other technical gaps, these developing nations choose to be in that multilateral forum. So, this is the way operate. This is to, for example, they want to enhance collective bargaining power of these countries or vis-a-vis other developing countries. So, to enhance their collective achievement or collective intervention and also interest by as compared to developing ones. So they want to be heard, they want to tell their voices, and also make impact and pressure on developing ones. So as to make their voice heard, they collaborate and use multilateral forums like the United Nations. And this is also to address issues with the spirit of cooperation and peace. As far as the global political system is very toxic and changing from time to time, the peace and stability of the world depends on the collective actions of states. That is why the United Nations mostly attempt to bring global peace and stability at the will of the states. States are there to just do the same. Otherwise, it's challenging. Maintaining global peace and stability cannot be carried out by the developed ones or developing ones. So cooperation is very important. Cooperation is very interesting. So mostly developing nations and other countries choose to pursue these multilateral forums to achieve global peace and stability, cooperation in economy, security, and also humanitarian access. That is what we see in different countries. Countries such as Germany, Scandinavian countries use this kind of approach to their movement. Generally, in today's lesson, we have seen foreign policy dimensions. These are three in type. Number one is alignment, which has three concepts in itself: alliance, neutrality, and non-alignment. These are alignment tendencies. And the second one is scope, the scope at which the countries set their foreign policy and pursue it in the international relation or international system. This is from global aspect. The second one is from regional aspect, and the third one is from isolation aspect. And the third one is modes of operation or modes of operandi. This is mostly carried out from unilateral approach and also multilateral approach. Having said this, I would like to wrap it up in this way. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share, and hit the notification button just to get notified every time new video arrives on Sanyii Academy. Thank you for your cooperation. Thank you for your patience. God bless you. Until next time, bye bye.